Welcome to the Ernie Chambers Show.
I'm Ernie Chambers. Last week, I started talking about a book that was written not too long ago about Frederick Douglass. It's called Frederick Douglass, Prophet of Freedom, and it's by a man named David W. Blight. I had begun to go into the book a bit about Frederick Douglass, and as happens with me, I got on a tangent or another trail and did not cover everything I wanted to. So I'm going to do justice as much as I can to Frederick Douglass today. But before that, I've got to say something about my people. You know who my people are? Let me give you a little background. I do this when I try to explain to people whom I'm willing to help. The Bible says that of one blood, God made all nations of men for to dwell upon the face of the earth. So everybody on this earth, whatever your complexion, whatever your language, nationality, or anything else, there is common blood in the veins of every human being. Blood transfusions are not restricted to people of the same so-called race. First of all, the concept of race is not based on biology or science. It is sociological, it is political. There are people who are white based on that notion, but they don't want to be white because they're embarrassed. So they say, I'm African American. And to show how crazy things are in this country, it could be somebody as white as this paper, and that person could say, well, I'm African American. And since the standard for determining that status is one drop of Black blood can turn an apparently white person into a Black person, they get away with it. There are people of different groups, whether they're described in terms of a nationality, a race, any of those things. They make no difference in the realm of science. There is one genus and species when it comes to human beings. Whenever two members can reproduce, they are of the same species. So, of one blood are all people formed. They all share in it. We're all in it together, whether we like it or not. Narrow it down to a literal family. There are people in families of whom others are ashamed. They don't want to claim that person. And to show the racist bent of this country, if it's a white guy, if it's an Italian, if it's any other nationality or group, and this member is on the outs, lives on the margins, does bad things, what do they call him? Not a white sheep, but a Black sheep. Because the term Black has a racial tinge in this country. It does not designate a color. For instance, I'm Black. If my so-called race is being discussed, but my color is not. And I used to infuriate some people on the floor of the legislature and others who might have been watching when I'd say, I'm a Black man, and were I Blacker, I could be prouder. To let them know I have no inclination, no desire to be what they are, to be like them. I'm satisfied with what my parents and their parents and their parents all the way back gave to me. This is the package in which I was wrapped, and I'm not going to try to get out of it. I'm not going to deny it. I'm not going to apologize for it. Should I apologize because I've got 2 eyes when a spider has 8? So much in this society manifests the ignorance of the people in the society. Unfortunately, those people called white control everything. And when they're ignorant, everybody is fed ignorance. And then they think in slogans and speak in cliches. There are politicians who will say, I'm opposed to this CRT, not even knowing what the letters stand for, critical race theory. And they don't know what that means. But what they mean is that anything pertaining to Black people should not be taught in the schools, not even the slavery period, though this country was built on slavery, could not have survived in the way that it did without slavery. And if these ignorant white people, not just the ones who are unlettered, ignorance means you lack knowledge. So there are white college professors who are ignorant. There are situations where people from other countries have written histories of the world, of America, and point out that were it not for the presence of African slaves in this country, America's economy could not survive. Without Black people, this country would not exist today. And I'm sure with that information, the native populations in this country wish that no Black people had been brought across the Atlantic Ocean in chains. When they brought us here, why do I say us when this is 2021 and those things happened centuries ago? Because what is in me goes all the way back to the first individual who walked on this planet who had anything of a genetic nature that I share in today. But let me get back to the point that I was going to make. To define or describe the people that I'm willing to help, I start with the broadest categorization possible. All human beings share the same blood. There was an English poet named John Donne, and he wrote a poem called For Whom the Bell Tolls. And it starts, and I'm not going to give it verbatim because I want to make a point. No man, and that would include woman, no man is an island entire unto itself. And the itself refers to the island, not the man. No man is an island entire unto itself. Each is a part of the main. That word main meant England. He was writing about England. As you know, or should know, England has got a lot of water around it. It's a big island. He went on to say that if a clod is washed away, the whole, the main, is reduced or lessened the same way it would be if a promontory, a cliff, or a large dwelling were washed away. So no matter how inconsequential one person may seem to be, he or she is a part of the main or the human family. And it goes on to say, because I am a part of mankind, every man's death diminishes me. Every person's death diminishes me, for I'm a part of mankind. Therefore, seek not to know for whom the bell tolls. It tolls for thee. That was a reference to the tolling of the bells when somebody croaks. So we now can go to the Bible. You've heard me say this before, those of you who've been around a while and heard me talk. This is in probably the second chapter of Genesis, 17th verse or somewhere in there. 4 people were on the earth: Adam, the first man; Eve, the first woman. By the way, Adam lived 930 years, which people don't know. That's what the Bible says. If it's right or wrong, I don't have any way of knowing. But Adam was not only the first man, Adam was the first mother. Did you ever stop to think about that? When a living critter comes from the body of a living critter, that one that produced it is the mother. Eve was born of and from Adam. Adam, therefore, was the first mother. The first man, the first mother. Eve came after Adam, and she's been after Adam ever since. Oh, there's so many things in the Bible. If you just read it. Now, all of us, in my opinion, have an obligation and responsibility to help each other when somebody's in need and we're in a position to help them. This is brought home to me by the set of circumstances where Cain and Abel offered something to God. He was pleased with Abel's, but not Cain. So Cain was upset and he killed his brother. God asked Cain, "Where is thy brother Abel? For his blood crieth out to me from the ground." Well, God knows everything. He knew that Cain was a murderer. He knew that Cain was a liar. Why did he know? Because he made him. And there's a verse in the Bible that says, can the vessel say to the potter, "Why hast thou made me thus?" If God built a machine that would add figures, subtract, multiply, and divide, that can be called a calculator. Over here is a machine with letters. Would God not be insane to destroy this machine that was designed to reproduce letters because it does not function as a calculator? Destroy the calculator because it does not function as a typewriter? There can be nothing existing that was not put here by a creator. Nothing makes itself. Back to my story. God knew that Cain killed Abel, and he was going to make Abel tell a lie by posing a question that he knew Cain would not tell the truth about. "Where is thy brother?" Cain, "I know not. Am I my brother's keeper?" And that question was answered nowhere in the Bible. God didn't answer it. Cain didn't answer it. So it's left for all of you who consider yourself Bible believers to answer it. You are indeed your brother's and your sister's keeper, not in the sense of a zookeeper watching over a lower form of life, called lower by human beings in their arrogance. But animals do much better what they were designed to do than humans do in terms of what humans are designed to do. Nevertheless, if we indeed are our brothers and our sisters' keeper, then we have an obligation to everybody. When I got in that legislature, they make you stand up there the first day and take an oath. You put your right hand up and you repeat after the Chief Justice when he tells you to. He'll tell you what to say. But he says, "Do you swear or affirm?" Some people swear. There were some religious people in the early days of this country who didn't believe in swearing, and that's because of what the Bible said. Jesus, whom they say they worship, all Christians say, don't swear by heaven because it's God's throne. Don't swear by Jerusalem, for it is the city of the great king. Don't swear by the earth, for it is his footstool. Don't swear by your head, because you can't make one hair white or black. I say to you, I'm Jesus, the one you worship. I say to you, don't swear at all. Let your yea be nay, yea, and your nay be nay. Anything that comes more than this is evil. So you know what you Christians do? You take that Bible, which says, swear not at all, and you put a person's hand on it and make that person say, I swear, contradicting what the Bible says should be, making that person go contrary to what the Bible says should be done. So if you claim to believe it, don't really believe in it, why should anybody else? Jesus had said, by your works will all men know you. Why do I talk about this religion? Because it infects people everywhere, especially Black people. And they are all hypocritical, all of them. They do what they can get away with doing. Preachers are chasing skirts and trousers. They talk about the Holy Spirit in the Bible, in church, and then they leave it and retire to the tavern where they engage in other spirits from the nether regions. So, in order for the people in this country to not exclude those who took seriously some things in the Bible, such as swear not at all, the Constitution, when a person is taking office and must take it upon oath, will be allowed to swear or affirm. You don't have to swear, but you must affirm. I always affirm, and I won't swear. When I affirm that I will do the job to the best of my ability, that's me giving my word. And my word, with no supernatural threat of punishment or promise of reward, binds me more than that swearing by these so-called Christians. They hurl those things in God's face, in Jesus's face, and in so many words say, go to Hades. It means nothing to me. They are more concerned about what human beings think about them than their God. And these are white people who started all of this. Black people didn't bring Christianity over here. And what they gave Black people that was called Christianity was not that. White God, white Jesus, white Mary, everything white. And they found verses in the Bible that, like, slaves, obey your master, for this is right and pleasing in the sight of God. Although the Bible is full of things that would indicate that if you are going to practice what that Bible preaches, every person should be your brother and your sister, because you should love your neighbor as yourself. And who is your neighbor? Everybody. That's why all of the things that white people have written and said carry no weight. And it's also why they are against the history of this country being taught to their children. If the only way you can make these white children believe that this is the greatest country in the world, which Ricketts, a liar, a hypocrite, and a racist, claim, the only way you can make them accept that is to hide from them what this country has done, the damage it has done and continues to do. Then you're building your house on the sand. And your Jesus said, house built on the sand will fall. The rains come, the sand is dissolved, the house falls. If your house is built on a rock, let the winds blow, let the rains come, let the earth tremble and shake, and the house is still there. If what this country did during its history was noteworthy and praiseworthy, and if indeed America is the greatest country on the face of the earth, let it show by its works such as the case. Let its history be presented, history written by white people about the slavery, the viciousness, the raping, the child molestation, the breeding of children on the bodies of enslaved women, and then selling those children like cows, pigs, and chickens. And those children could be treated in a way that was cruel, and it was not allowed to treat animals that way, or you could be punished under the law. In other words, white people reduced us based on the treatment given to us below the level of animals. We were a part of the kingdom of thingdom. We were things, but sexually attractive things. White women drooled for Black men. White men drooled for Black women. But the white men who mistreated their own women could have their way with Black women, but white women couldn't have their way with Black men without risking death. Not because she was virtuous, white men knew their women, but it brought shame to the white man because his woman messed with a Black man in a way that other people found out, so she's punished for getting caught, not for what she did. That's the whole story of the white so-called race. This book, written about Frederick Douglass by a white guy, records the words of a very great man with a powerful intellect. Let the truth be told. I'm interested in this matter of the pandemic because of the fact that people are being misled, lied to, and dying as a result. Your racist, idiotic governor who has more hair on his head than he's got sense in his head, and he hasn't got a lick of hair on his head, and the attorney general, racist to the core, are so blinded by their politics that they are speaking against steps that the government wants to put in place to protect people from a virus that is killing people all over the world and throughout this country. I have an article here, and I'm going to get into Frederick Douglass, not everything, but see, that's what talking about Fred causes me to do. Worker support grows for harsher vaccine stances. Now you have these racists like Rick is your governor saying that the rights of Americans are being violated when they are required to get a vaccination. Biden has put in place that all federal workers, all employers with 100 or more employees must have a vaccination. And these racist Republicans are saying that is depriving Americans of their freedom. What Americans have freedom to do is be safe and protected from virulent epidemics. Why don't you look at what the workers themselves are saying? I don't mean these nitwits out on the fringes, the followers of that QAnon. This article says, and it's written in Bloomberg News, as U.S. regulatory approval of Pfizer Inc.'s COVID-19 shot paves the way for companies to get more aggressive with inoculations, American workers are increasingly supportive of punitive measures for unvaccinated colleagues. A survey released Tuesday by human resources consultant Eagle Hill showed that 41% of workers polled agreed that non-vaccinated employees should pay a higher insurance rates. Almost 2/3 said the unvaccinated should not get special allowances to work from home. A separate poll of employers found that the share of those imposing vaccine mandates or planning to do so in some way has more than doubled since the start of the year. Then you have these nitwits like Ricketts saying, don't require people to be vaccinated. Well, he's a rich man. He's not a rich man. He's a son of a rich man. His daddy is the one who generated the fortune. He is the one who created TD Ameritrade. Ricketts, the dumb one in the governor's office, made such a mess in the company that the daddy told him, you are not going to continue to have a place of authority in this company. Go into politics, and if you run, I'll pay and spend any amount of money necessary to get you an office, to get you out of this place where you're messing up. As governor, he cannot put together a good legislative program. Can't do anything about taxes, can't do anything about unemployment, can't do anything about anything, but he's a parrot who repeats what Trump says. Originally, the whole Ricketts family was against Trump even getting the nomination, saying that he is unstable, he will hurt the country. Then you know what Ricketts said? Trump said, the Rickettses had better be careful because they got a lot to hide. And when that was printed in the paper, all of a sudden, Marianne or Marilyn, whatever, Mama Ricketts, Grandma Rick, the governor's mama's name, she had put hundreds of thousands of dollars into campaigning against Trump getting the nomination. Once Trump made that threat, Mama Ricketts, Daddy Joe Ricketts, and bald-headed son Ricketts all jumped on Trump's bandwagon. And people from that day on wonder, what is it that the Rickettses have to hide that's not known? It couldn't be that one of the governor's brothers, the son of Joe Ricketts, was cheating on his property taxes in Chicago, because that was known and written about. Other wrongdoing by the Ricketts clan. There's something he's got on them. So now Baldy praises everything Trump says, backs him on everything, says that there should not be a mandate that employees be vaccinated, because that's what Trump said. Ricketts, Baldy Ricketts, wants to be a miniature Trump. He's got the last part of it already, and that's rump, T-R-U-M-P. Well, he's the rump. Let me continue. The rapid spread of the Delta variant has disrupted plans to get workers back to the office and spurred companies from Facebook Inc. to Citicorp Group Inc. and Walt Disney Company. These are companies to impose vaccine requirements for employees in workplaces. This article was written in August. President Joe Biden on Monday called for more corporate mandates and is counting on the Pfizer approval to help ease hesitancy among vaccine holdouts. Yet there remains a broad swath of people who may be unmoved without other measures. Quote, we have reached the point where employers might be at 80% vaccinated, but it's just not moving higher, said Wade Simons, the national leader of the regulatory resource group at human resources consultant Mercer. Quote, so how do we get that number higher? He asked. Employers are increasingly moving beyond monetary rewards like the $100 that Kroger Company and others give to those getting jabbed, according to the second survey. Such approaches offer a middle ground from a full vaccine mandate, which could hurt morale and lead to staff defections at a time of shortages in the labor market. More aggressive options include levying surcharges on healthcare premiums, like some companies already do for smokers, to denying free coffee, fitness rooms, or other perks to the unvaccinated, according to human resources consultants. Some employers are even rearranging office layouts to give more desirable real estate to vaccinated workers. Quote, giving people money to get the vaccine does not work as well as companies would like, said Brian Kropp, Chief of Human Resources Research at consultant Gartner. So there are a lot of other things that companies are exploring. One is the healthcare surcharge, which has become a hot topic of conversation. According to Mercer Simons, it might move the needle if employees know that if they are not vaccinated, it will come out of their paycheck. But there are more recent reports that the employees in these companies are saying they don't want to have to work with unvaccinated people. Their health is at risk. But Ricketts and Trump and their ilk don't care about you workers out there. You don't count. You're dumb. You're like sheep. You follow the leader. You're like lemmings. You will follow your leader and jump right off a cliff and drown in the ocean because you don't think. So let me give you a few Bible verses, then I'm gonna get down to some of these other things. You see how I digress? That's the way I do things. I told you that my mantra was given to me by Popeye. I am what I am, and that's all that I am. I am one who digresses as a spirit. I use that term advisedly, will move me. Talking about people not getting the vaccination. Matthew 15th chapter, 14th verse. Let them alone. They be blind, leaders of the blind. And if the blind lead the blind, they shall both fall into the ditch. Then people like me, oh, that my head were waters and mine eyes a fountain of tears, that I might weep day and night for my people. Jeremiah 9th chapter, 2nd verse. Hosea the 4th chapter, 6th verse. My people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. Luke 16:31. And Jesus said unto him, if they hear not Moses and the prophets, neither will they be persuaded, though one rose from the dead. That's what goes for all you idiots out there who won't get the vaccination. And that's what you are. But you're not just an idiot. You are a plague. You are a carrier of disease and death. You don't have the sense that will come out of the brains that you were born with if you were not so easily misled. And you are easily misled. That's why these people like Ricketts again are trying to do what they can to keep the real history of this country from being taught in school. Some people have heard of the Koch brothers. One of them died. They are from Germany. Their father had them reared by a nanny who was a Nazi. That's the era they were born into. This article was in the Sunday World Herald, October 17th. The headline was Conservative Koch Network Disavows Bans on Critical Race Theory. Means he's against these people saying that the true facts of American history should not be taught. Now, going into the article, it was written by a reporter with the Associated Press, Thomas Beaumont. As conservative political groups mobilized to ban in schools what they call critical race theory, one prominent backer of Republican causes and candidates is notably absent. Leaders in the network built by the billionaire Koch family say they oppose government bans over teaching about race and history in schools. And he knows what happened during Nazi Germany. He has never said, don't teach what the Nazis did. It reflects on Germans and the German nation. Continuing, while they note they don't agree with the ideas at the center of the fight, they argue the government bans now enacted in 11 states stifle debate essential to democracy. Quote, using government to ban ideas, even those we disagree with, is also counter to core American principles, the principles that help drive social progress, said Evan Feinberg, executive director of the Koch-affiliated Stand Together Foundation. They are so conservative, they squeak when they walk. That position is in line with the network's long-held libertarian streak, but it has sparked fresh charges of hypocrisy from the mega donors' critics. After spending years pouring money into conservative groups, the Koch groups cannot distance themselves from the movement it helped to build. It's like the monster that Frankenstein built. And the most famous statement in that book, from my position, the monster said to the one who made him, to the doctor, "You are my creator, but I'm your master." The Koch brothers created a lot of the racist operations by donating to racist Republicans. And now that monster is not able to be controlled by the Kochs. Well, the remaining Koch. Going on with the article. They have this nice position they want to tout from a PR standpoint, but their money has gone to these groups that have the opposite effect on that agenda, said Lisa Graves, board president for the liberal watchdog group Center for Media and Democracy. The Koch organization first went public with its position last spring as state lawmakers and conservative groups began passing legislation that bans from classrooms specific concepts, including the idea that racism is systemic in society and the US legal system. Every Black person knows that racism is everywhere, and the racists who practice it know it, and they know they can get away with it because racism rules. And if you look at the very word conservatives, in it, you will find racism. No, because there's no M in conservative, but in the word conservatism, there's racism. And in the word conservatists, there is racist. Just rearrange the letters and you see what they really are about. The efforts were prompted in part by backlash to the 1619 Project, a New York Times Magazine initiative aimed at rethinking the role of slavery in the nation's history and development. Well, these white people want to say there was no such thing as slavery. These Black people were immigrants. Crazy. Craziness is running this country and it's ruining it. Let me depart. You all may not read the newspapers. You may not accept news. You might follow what you get on that Fox make-believe network. The Chinese have over 100 missiles that go faster than sound. That means that if they launched it, you are hit before you even hear the sound of it. Those missiles could be on the way to America right now. And the Chinese have hundreds of them, and they're going to have thousands of them shortly. So without a declaration of war, as America has often waged war in various parts of the world without a declaration of war, China can decide that they now have what they need. And they can position these missiles in various locations around the world. While you got these ignorant white racists in this country arguing about not teaching about slavery and what America was about, China is slowly making inroads with a lot of non-white countries. They're even in Afghanistan. Did you know that? Yeah, where ISIS and the Taliban are operating. Right now, there's a little disagreement between ISIS and the Taliban, but China is in Afghanistan. And some people are saying they wish that China might, because of its economic interests, rein in some of the more what are called radical practices and programs of not only the Taliban, who, at least in name, rule the country, and ISIS. They are making and have made more and more inroads in Africa. The countries that Trump referred to as, I don't use the language, but SHIT-whole countries. That's what he calls Africa and the Caribbean area, where there are islands with Black people. He said that's what these countries are. They need fewer people from these S-hole countries and more from places like Norway, Sweden, and the Norwegian areas. While he's got all these ignorant white Americans trying to keep their foot on the neck of Black people, China is becoming the preeminent country in the world, economically, militarily, And do you know why there are problems in the auto industry? They cannot get the microchips they need. And guess which country has just about cornered the market on the development and production of microchips? You got it, China. Lithium is being mined in the western part of the country, and the people out there don't like it because of what it's doing to the terrain and destroying the environment. But that lithium is processed to a greater extent in China than anywhere else in the world. Lithium is mined in America, processed in China, and China controls the market. The people who make computers are having trouble because they can't get the chips they need. Auto manufacturers cannot produce the vehicles they want to because they cannot get the chips that they need. And China is there. They could launch enough missiles. Oh, and don't think they don't know where all of America's underbelly parts are located. The military operations, the headquarters. That's what spies do. That's what people within America do when they reveal information. They could have every major target in this country targeted. They could have the coordinates, and they can program these missiles, and they have the capacity to reach the United States. So what happens? No warning. And America has to admit that they have no way to counter these missiles. They do not have the level of expertise that the Chinese have. The missiles could be coming right now, and they hit all of the critical targets. They knock out electrical grids. They probably know where uranium is enriched. They know where the nuclear weapons are stockpiled. It's been reported that they are producing mock-ups of United States warships, carriers, and so forth. They're not doing it so that they can play games like little boys play with bigger toys. They are as serious as a heart attack, and they are practicing, and they're doing it for a reason. So while all of these racist white people are getting the other ignorant white people saying, like Ricketts, like that guy on the Board of Regents, we don't want anything taught about CRT. This is the greatest country in the world, but the only reason it'll stay that way is because our children are not told the truth about it. And the missiles come. Then suddenly, wham, there was a song. It was called Dangerous Dan McGrew. These guys that said a bunch of them were whooping it up at the Malamute Cafe. They were having a good time. And Dangerous Dan McGrew was a bad fellow. And one of the verses says, and suddenly, wham, all the lights went out. And a voice cried, die you must. A woman screamed, a shot rang out, and somebody bit the dust. The lights flashed on, and the Northwest Mounted Police came crashing through. They drew their gun and said, which one is Dangerous Dan McGrew? And Dangerous Dan was playing his hand and keeping his mind on his game. I'm not going to tell you the rest of it. But suddenly, wham, the lights will go out. And a lot of people will not just bite the dust. They won't even be dust. They will be vaporized. You think I'm lying? You think I'm playing? You think I'm making it up? That's all right. When Noah said there's going to be a flood, nobody believed him. Then when the flood came, they hammered on the windows, battered at the door, saying, oh, brother Noah, can't you take on more? Noah cried out, said, I'm sorry, my friend, but not by the hair of my chinny chin chin. In other words, you can't come in. That's the way it is with the pandemic even. If while people literally are dying every day, from elderly people to babies, from some form of COVID. You have white men and women convincing you all that you shouldn't get the vaccination. You'll kill yourselves. Your ignorance will cause you to perish. You think you can make something so by saying it. You think you can make something go away by ignoring it. I read as much as I can. I listen to as much news as I have time for. And the only thing I regret is, unlike Adam, I will not be able to live 930 years. Or better yet, like Methuselah, the oldest man based on the Bible, 969 years. What kind of reader am I of the Bible when I know the ages of all these people? I'm very curious. There are so many things I don't know. I'm one of those people who is honest enough to say, and it might sound arrogant, I know enough to fill a book. But I add immediately, what I don't know would fill a library. And that's why I could spend, if I had the time to spare, all my time in a library, letting my mind, so to speak, rub elbows with better minds, more highly informed minds on all types of subjects. And I constantly harp on the notion that curiosity did not kill the cat. That statement is not complete. It should say curiosity killed the cat's ignorance, because the killing of ignorance is the first step toward knowledge, wisdom, and understanding. Curiosity is the deadly enemy of ignorance. But you have all of this stuff fed to you and you're satisfied, because for you, ignorance is bliss. For this country, they will be blissful until the missiles that they didn't even hear strike their targets. And then you'll be saying, what's it all about, Alfie? It's about what you wouldn't pay attention to. You need to stop all this silliness, and you white people need to stop fighting among yourselves. The demagogues are white, the Republicans are white, the so-called radicals are white. You white people need to stop your barbarism, your hatred toward and of each other. If you could find peace between and among yourselves, you could bring peace to this planet. You would stop destroying the place where you live. Scientists say that when an animal will foul its own nest, using that term to designate where a creature lives, so that it uses a nest, a cave, or whatever. When a creature will foul its own nest, it is on the way to extinction. It's not maintaining those basic fundamentals that are essential to being able to survive. And as more and more of them die, pretty soon they all die out. You white people have not run out of time yet. You could save this planet, and you could start by saving what you call your country. Black people have greater claim to ownership in this country than you do. Our people worked harder than any of you ever worked. Thomas Jefferson complained in this thing he wrote called Notes on Virginia, how lazy white people had become, how their children had begun to equate working with slavery. And because they didn't want to be slaves, they would not work. You didn't know that? You didn't know there were white people who refused to work? And they blamed it or excused it by saying slaves do that kind of work. Slavery was your curse and it was your blessing. but it was nothing but a curse to Black people. I'm still victimized by it today. I have to think the thoughts that I think, do the things that I do because of white people did what white people did to my ancestors, my forebears, and continue to do to me and those like me today. But I'm not going to take it lying down. I'm not going to pretend everything is all right. Warren Buffett and nobody else could force me to do something because they have something that I'm trying to get. And nobody like that will make offers to me because they know I'm not for sale. I've spent a lot of time trying to come up with a formula, a combination of words, ideas, metaphors, similes, analogies, parables to put in white people's minds an understanding of the fact that they are killing themselves because they are so hostile toward and interested in harming everybody else. You look at me as the one to kill you, and there's Cyrus the virus just chuckling because Cyrus the virus is desirous that you expire and you're going to help him. Shouldn't I be pleased to see my enemies die? Something is wrong with me because I take seriously what John Donne wrote, that because I'm a part of humankind, every person's death, although metaphorically, diminishes me. Every person dies and takes a little bit of mankind, humankind, with him or her. But others are being born. And unfortunately, they will not be given the opportunity to flourish intellectually and otherwise because they're going to be fed the hatred, the lies, the false promises that govern America now. You cannot find anybody who's ever been in the Nebraska legislature who got more legislation that helped white people than the one who's talking to you now. Even white farmers, who were the most hateful ones toward us, when they were being cheated by the government, I was the one they turned to, and I was the one who helped them. When one of their kind, who was a member of a racist group, they were called generally the Posse Comitatus, was shot by the Nebraska State Patrol on his farm, I was the one who came to the aid of his family and insisted on a grand jury investigation of his killing. And it went all over the country because apparently these farm groups have networks. And I began to get invitations to travel around this country to talk to white farmers whom I knew had hatred toward me and my kind. But there was a tiny possibility that maybe if they had direct contact with a Black man who would take the time, waste the time, as it turns out, to speak to them, answer their questions, explain to them, help them lay out strategies, it might modify their attitude. All in vain. Some individuals changed. I was invited to go down to Kansas when there were a lot of foreclosures going on. And I was invited by a group of farmers, and I went. I drove in my car, spending my money on gas to drive down to Kansas and help these farmers who asked me for help. Why didn't they ask white people? Why didn't they ask for the governor of Nebraska? When people are desperate, they go where they think they can get help. And while I was there, I was told before I left by the people that I'd brought them things in a way that made them understand what was happening to them. And at one point I asked one of these guys, tell me what I said that impressed you, so if I go to talk to others situated as you all are, I don't have to just thrash around hoping I can say something I will know. He said, well, when you gave that example of 10 farmers and they've all got these loans that they can't pay back. And you explained how when you first get the loan, then the farmers, the banker's your friend, and you have enough equipment and land and maybe crops to cover the amount of the loan. But if you have a bad spell, prices fall, then you don't have enough in the way of collateral that you put in originally to retire that loan if it should be called in. So it's called classified, and they demand additional collateral. And pretty soon, everything you've got belongs to the bank. And the bank is not interested in holding real estate. The bank is not interested in holding farm equipment. So what do? They have a farm auction. And what happens? The 9 who are still surviving are thanking God that they're not in the condition of the 10th one. Now, bankers are not going to bid on that equipment. You know who will bid on it? I said, you all will. Who wants a combine? A farmer, especially if you can get it cheap. How can you get it cheap? By cannibalizing your own kind. You go to one of your brothers who is unfortunate, and instead of you pooling your resources who got something, and maybe you all help him get out of this bad situation, which any one of you may fall into, you go there and you buy his equipment and you thank God that it's not you. And now there are 9 of you, then 8, then 7, then 6. And it's because you are cannibalizing each other. And this guy told me that stuck with us and rang a bell like nothing else that you said. So then when I'd go to these places, I'd use that example. The reaction, more or less, would always be the same. There are people smarter than you all who are lending you money. There are people who don't mean you well. There are people who want what you've got, not to keep for themselves, but they'll transfer it over here and get some more money because you're a deadbeat now. White people are not as smart as they want people to think they are. So they have to put on a false front. In order to make their children think this is indeed the greatest country in the world, they cannot allow their children to hear the truth. So they want to prevent the schools from teaching what this country is about. Do you know why people in Britain, in the United Kingdom, have so much interest in America? Because at one time, the colonists were English citizens. When they rebelled against the king, they committed treason against their king. Colonies are developed for the sake and the enrichment of the mother country. Colonists are bankrolled to go there so they can do whatever it takes to build an economy, and money, goods can redound to the benefit of the so-called mother country. So when the colonists were in rebellion, they started and grew out of treason. So they know something about treason and being traitors. traitors. When England had some of the most humane laws, they were condemned for having some of the most barbaric punishments. And there were actually Englishmen who were given a choice. You can either face the gallows, or you can go to America or Australia, which was a penal colony, like what America was becoming. And some chose to die rather than come to America because they thought life would be harder and they may not even be able to make the voyage. When you say the United Kingdom, what's the difference between England and the United Kingdom? There are other countries that are part of it. I don't know all of them, but I know it would be Ireland, Scotland, probably some that I haven't thought of. But those countries together comprise the United Kingdom. And when America came to this country, they used savagery against the people that they found here. There were people in Massachusetts Bay Colony who wrote reports of seeing the heads of, they called them Indians because people thought that that's what this country was when they first, however they got turned around, but they also called them savages. The heads of the savages would be kicked through the streets like footballs. And to those people, football was soccer, not what you think of as football. Sometimes they would build large fires. They would put kettles on the fire, put grease of some kind in it, and put the heads of the so-called savages in these kettles and fry them. Read your history. And that's what these white people don't want you to do. My curse is that I do want to know. I do take the time to learn about things that I don't know. And the more I know, the more dissatisfied I become, and the more trouble I become about what is going to happen to human beings. I don't take pleasure in the thought that these white people's little children will grow up without parents because their parents are so ignorant, they will die from COVID. There were things in this book about Frederick Douglass that were quoted from Frederick Douglass's autobiography, and he wrote 3 of them. I'm going to see if I can find something that might be of interest, and I may not have brought it with me. But Fred talked about how he didn't know who his father was, that it could have been the so-called master. He hoped that it wasn't, but there was not any way to know. But let me read you something. And this is from this book about Frederick Douglass by the white man. I'll tell you all about these white slaveholders, the ones you all lionized, your so-called founding fathers, George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, Patrick Henry, James Madison, Andrew Jackson, Francis Scott Key, all of them, your heroes. And by the way, Francis Scott Key is the one who wrote the words that became your national anthem, called it the land of the free and the home of the brave, while he was a slaveholder, committing adultery, raping Black women. And do you know where the melody came from that you ignorant white people are so infatuated with, enamored of? You say enamored with because you don't know grammar. You are enamored of things. You're not enamored with things. And they use the word apropos to sound like they know how to speak French. They say it's apropos to do this. No, it's apropos of. Of is the word that follows apropos. But well, it doesn't matter to you because the ones listening to you are as dumb as you are. Douglass famously recorded an incident that gives credence to this image of this slaveholder named Anthony. He was the foreperson, as an old and angry, lecherous, and violent man. Shortly after arriving at the Y House, WYE, at age 6 and joining the swarm of slave children there, Douglass was asleep early one morning in his normal place, the floor of a rough closet which opened into the kitchen. He was awakened by the shrieks and piteous cries of his 15-year-old aunt, Hester. Anthony had dragged her into the kitchen at dawn, made her strip to the waist, forced her to stand on a bench on her toes as her wrists were tied to a wooden joist above her head. You know, those beams that support the ceiling. Old Master stood behind Hester, her neck, shoulders, and back entirely naked, an ugly cowskin lash in his hand, shouting, "Damned bitch," and other epithets too coarse and blasphemous for readers to bear. Little Frederick looked on in horror through cracks in the boards as Anthony adjusted the whip in his hand. This brave white man, the master race, a Christian, Anthony adjusted the whip in his hand, steadied his feet for leverage, and dealt one overhand blow after another to the young woman's bleeding neck and shoulder blades. The blood dripped on her clothes and down to the floor. The old man clenched his teeth, gripped the cowskin, and delivered his torture, seemingly delighted with the scene. Embedded in Douglass's rendering of this scene is his broader, can you understand why I have contempt for your so-called founding fathers, the slaveholders? This is what they did to Black women. They were rapists. They were child molesters. They were adulterers. And you call them the founding fathers, whose reputations must be protected by not telling the truth that some of them even wrote about. And the reason these racists don't want history taught is because a lot of it comes from the writings of the ones who are engaging in it. Copperheads were white people in the North who supported slavery. They'd go down south to these plantations so they could have sex with the slaves and even be allowed to beat them. Oh, you didn't know there were a lot of sadists then? You need to read. Why do you think this woman's name, Ghislaine, whatever it is, who hasn't been allowed to post bond because she was procuring young girls for this guy, Weinstein? They still do it now, but now they have laws against human trafficking. But these are the things that the founding fathers of your country did. In Douglass's rendering of this scene is his broader discussion of Anthony's motives for such a beating. Hester had been seeing a young slave teenager, Ned Roberts, also 15 years old. He was raping this 15-year-old girl, the so-called slave master. And Douglass describes both of them as beautiful and attractive young people falling in love. Hester had rejected Anthony's advances and paid dearly for it on that morning. Anthony, Douglass reported, wanted to, quote, break up the growing intimacy of the young lovers, but his efforts were to no avail. Douglass turned this episode of his childhood into a parable about the sexual corruption and the spirit-killing immorality at the center of the master-slave relationship. Hester lived with the curse of her personal beauty, and Ned with his almost powerless desire to court and marry her. The jealous Anthony's intentions were abhorrent in every sense, his methods foolish. What slavery so lacked in sexual and familial relations, Douglass offered, was a sense of normalcy, of the peace in which to love freely. Hester should have been free to give her affections to the handsome young man she liked, and Ned free to become a husband. But who or what, asked Douglass, the autobiographer, was the old master? His answer, Douglass's answer, a tyrant with no bounds, a torturer, a man any civilized society would try and convict for his awful criminality. But alas, Anthony, exhausted from whipping, wiping off the blood-clotted cowskin, ushered the mangled and weeping Hester out of the kitchen, not knowing that a little boy crouched in a closet, peering in terror at the blood on the floor. Douglass's crafting of the beating of his beautiful young aunt is a former slave's recitation of an overwhelmingly vivid, traumatic memory of a morning in a slave boy's terrible education. It took him many years to understand and find the language for the rage that old master's whip and Hester's blood had left in him. And you wonder why Black people are sick and tired of what these racists are doing now. And you know why white people are so afraid of us? They think that we might do to them what they've done to us. That's what they're worried about. They know what they would do if they were situated and treated as we are. But you never know when the worm might turn. I write rhymes. I don't know if I got one here. Oh, about Douglass and the words. I read this last week. He thought great thoughts, but lacked the words to give them tongue and sway. Meteor-like they flashed through his mind, then meteor-like died away. Reading great words written by others helped him to understand. Finally, the power of those words he too did command. When words did give tongue to his thoughts, a battle had been won. Thoughts no more were transient things, but permanent like the sun, like these examples that he wrote of what happened to his aunt at the hands of this white Christian. What I did, and I was kind of young myself, because I'd read about Frederick Douglass when I was in high school at first. And this is the writing of a youngster about another youngster. And I'd read about some of those slaves who had led insurrections, and they're portrayed as vicious people. But when you see what these rotten, no good Christian slave owners did, you would understand why some of these men who witnessed it couldn't take it anymore and had to do something, even at the risk of their lives. When they were caught, they'd be skinned alive, strips of flesh taken, their gonads, their testicles would be cut off while they lived. And the neck was being stretched. And white people stood around these scenes with their little children, their wives. This is the savagery of white people, and you see it to this day. The gleesome boy, so full of joy and filled with mirth and play. This is about Frederick Douglass, the way I saw it then. Lost it all beneath a pall he could not hold at bay. Slavery's ship and bloody whip, an iron chain for his feet, forged a doom alloyed with gloom. No part of life was sweet. The blood-drenched sod did stifle God. No light in darkness shone. A small voice said inside his head, alone, you are all alone. A slave he was, oh God, because there was no moral knife to cut the rope that strangled hope. He was a slave for life. They who are free will neither see nor fully understand how slavery's weight, crushingly great, can make the strongest bow. Little is left of slaves bereft of hope and spark of will. Many though strive just to survive, some seeking vengeance kill. 'Tis no surprise to realize men may turn into beasts when every shred of hope is dead and solely on hate each feasts. Old Nat Turner, strong sojourner, Prosser and Denmark Vesey, resistance spread no master's head on pillow at night could rest easy. And when I read those accounts of the slave uprisings, it did something helpful to me, for me. And I guess you could say it forged an inner core of iron that would not bend before white people's threats, their curses, would not yield to offers of money, women, alcohol, the things that purchase white people. I stood alone when I was very young, same in the legislature, had no fear, carried no gun then, carry no gun now. Do you know that if I want to kill you, I call the shots, I decide when and where and how, I will carry it out. And the same way if somebody intends to do something to me, I'm not going to walk around fearful and shaking. I wasn't afraid of anybody and anything while I was in the legislature, and I'm not afraid of anybody and anything now. I'm not crazy. And when I say a loaded brain is more powerful than a loaded gun, I'm not crazy. If I was talking like I'm talking right now, and somebody who meant it put a gun up to my head and said, Ernie, you say another word and I'll blow your brains out. Silent night. And now, as the canary said, when they told him the door to his cage was open, I'm out of here.
Thank you for watching The Ernie Chambers Show. If you'd like to make suggestions, email us at ewcfacts@gmail.com. That's ewcfacts@gmail.com. This has been an EWC Communication production.